very similar cards to before a cube, and then a complex pattern is what it's, or a complex form is what it's called. And I simply ask the participant to copy each of these forms on a sheet of paper. So lay a sheet of paper right here, give them a pencil, and then ask them to copy each one. With the most difficult one being the complex form here. And what I'm going to do is upload this to the wiki spaces, and then I'd like each of you to try tracing that one and also to the cube, because those are a little bit more challenging there. Subtest 10, reproduction of a two-dimensional model. So on page 20 of the test booklet here, we have this model right here, and then what we have are these basic shapes right here, and they are asked to reproduce this. So can they put the circle right here, triangle right there, and triangle right there. So kind of like that, just like that. So subtest 11, and that's a pegboard construction. I'm not going to actually do this one here for brevity's sake, but looking on here, this is the actual design right here that they are presented, and then they have pegs that they are to put in here and try and match this design matches here. And this assessment right here, I'll have to note, it did not come with pegs. So what I used at field work was I had the individual take a match and kind of put it in there like that. So matchstick, and try and mimic it that way. I thought that worked all right. Number 12 is the colored block design. So we've got this image right here, a geometric block design, and then we have the geometric blocks right here, and you can see that this is three-dimensional, and they have to try and reproduce that. I'm not going to get these out and do that. I think you can pretty much get the gist of that right there by looking at that, but you can see that it does have to have some three-dimensional layout there. And once again, they're scored on a 1 to 4 scale, and then they do the same for a plain block design, except first they are asked on this one to identify how many blocks are actually on this. And what I'll do is I'm going to upload this onto wiki spaces as well, and then you can try and guess how many blocks are on there. And the next one is reproduction of a puzzle, subtest 14. So we have this design right here that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's divided into 9 quadrants, and we have these small little puzzle pieces right here that we lay out randomly over the table, and then they are to try and take these and let's see here, match them on the actual puzzle piece. So, and they are scored based upon the number that they are able to get on there correctly. It's kind of a cool little portion of the assessment. And next one is drawing a clock. I know we've talked about this in class, and I thought this one was really neat. And we present a clock right here, and then we ask the participant to fill in the numbers on the clock and put the hands of the clock at 10:15. So they're to fill the numbers around and then put it at 10:15. And think a lot of us know and have learned at this point in time that this is a good way to potentially check for unilateral visual neglect, depending upon if they only see one half the clock over the other. And so that's an example of a sheet that we're going to want to make a copy of before we actually administer this assessment. So that's why it's good to do your prep work beforehand, because we don't want to write in the actual manual here. The next one is thinking operations. We've got some cards for this one. So we've got 14 cards, and I spread these randomly on the table here. So we got scissors, we got pencils, we got a car, a bike, helicopter, trains. So what we have here are cards that are that there are patterns and there are categories that we can place these within, and it's the client's ability to first. I asked sort the cards into groups, and they're to try and take these and sort these into individual groups or categorized groups, and then I asked the client to name the groups. So as an example, I could take the bike, the car, the helicopter, the plane, or actually even better yet, I could take the plane and the helicopter, and those would be flying through the air, and then I could take the ship and the sailboat as transporting by water, car and bike by land, etc. Or I could categorize all of these into simply transportation. Okay, and then I could make other categories such as the screwdriver and the hammer. Okay, those would be tools, and scissors, pencil, and typewriter as oftentimes office supplies, and then the needle and the sewing machine. So you can see how you can get these in different groups here, and then after they attempt that, it says after the participant has done the first grouping, the examiner asks, is there another possible way to sort them, and then name the groups. So you can try and sort them again, and so if they did a broader category the first time, they could try and make the groups a little bit more specific, like what I did right there, or they could do vice versa. And subtest 17, so we're getting closer towards the end here, is RISCA, object classification. So this was actually based and adapted off from prior research, but we have these little geometric pieces here. We've got half circle, oval, and an arrow here, and in the colors of cream, blackish or brown, and then white. And then there's 18 pieces total here, and then the examiner asks the individual to put these objects into groups that are alike. So are they going to classify them according to color? Are they going to classify them according to shape? Or they could even do distinguished groups that have one of each color and one of each shape in it. But there's any way to put these into groups. And then the examiner asks, how are your groups alike? And then they ask the participant to make, or the client to make different groups. They're scored on a 1 to 5 scale for this one, so this is where we are getting 5 scale scoring, and also to the previous subtest was a 5 scale scoring as well. Now after this, we move on to subtest 18, which where the examiner presents the individual with, it says 1 dark brown arrow, 1 cream quarter donut, and then 1 light brown oval. Light brown oval. So I would present the client with just this right here, just these 3. And then what I would say is, now I'm going to make a group. You make as many groups like mine as you can. So I guess I could make any type of group here. I might do all white, something like that. And then the individual tries to make as many or mimic as many as mine as they can. And then the examiner asks, how are your groups like mine? And then if, depending upon the response, then the examiner asks your groups are like mine in some ways, but not others, try to make them more like mine. Okay, so although there's not enough white to mimic this exact group right here, they could use different colors, so they at least could get a half circle and an arrow and an oval of similar color, or at least, or maybe they even match it in different colors as well. So, 19 is a pictorial sequence, so get these out here real quick. Make sure I put these in the right order. So these have to be shown to the client in this order right here. And what we see, this is actually a couple of individuals picking apples from a tree. And the order that they're in, they're out of sequence. And then the client is asked to put these cards in the right sequence and then tell the story of what they're doing. So, is the client able to first get the gentleman going up the ladder, or getting out the ladder, putting the ladder up next to the tree, picking the actual apples, walking down the ladder, and then actually giving an apple to then a friend. So that would be the correct sequence. So we can definitely see that there's some thinking operations here within this category. And it says if they receive a score of 4, meaning that they're able to do this and explain the story, then we present another sequence right here, which is, assume, a little bit more challenging. So we can see we get an extra card here, an extra part to the sequence, and then we simply ask the same thing. So is the individual able to put these in the right order and then explain the story? So we got a guy here raking up leaves. So, and then so that's subtest 19, and then subtest 20, geometric sequence. That is where we present this sequence right here. So I'd want to make a copy of this so they could actually write on this, but we present this sequence and then they're asked to complete the sequence. So we've got triangle, circle, square, triangle, circle, square, triangle, and then they should be putting a circle and then a square down if they want to do it in correct sequence here. Moving on, then after that, they are asked to do the next one, which is single vertical line, 1 horizontal line, double vertical line, double horizontal line, triple vertical line, triple horizontal line, quadruple or 4 vertical lines, and then can they do 4 horizontal lines, and then do 5 vertical, and then 5 horizontal, etc. And that completes the assessment. So you can see that quite lengthy, but at the same time too, it can be split into a couple of sessions. It just depends, but some of the activities in this are, I think, pretty neat. The very last thing that I would do is I would score the individual based on their attention and concentration. That's on a 1 to 4 scale as well. I'd make sure that my assessment sheet here is completed. So this is where we have our 1 to 4 options for each area. So this can be kind of used as a guide through the assessment as well. Each for this assessment is different than a lot of others in that there is not really a total score that's emphasized. We could add up all of our each of our 20 subtests to get a total score, but it's preferred that we look at each individual category or each individual subtest in and of itself, so we can get a more focused area of therapy, I guess, for therapy planning, etc., as this assessment's primary attention is for as to plan treatment, redefine